Hello everyone, I've been working in my yard today and I'm filming a video on taking down a tree. This is probably not the best way to take down a tree, but it was interesting, so I filmed it through the process. I hope you enjoy. Today is a hot day, hotter than usual for the end of September, and I am thankful to be out in my yard and able to cut a tree down today to get ready for hurricane season. As you can see behind me, I have this tree. I actually came out here and started cutting it down probably midsummer around there, but that day it started to rain, and coincidentally that was like one of the only days it actually rained in the summer here. But I stopped cutting it down that day and I haven't been back to it. So today it's coming down. But you can see the tree trunk there, and it's bordering this poor tree that is turning yellow, and I'm afraid that it's killing and choking this tree out. A few basic tips before you try to cut down a tree is you always want to practice safety. I have my sunglasses on. If you don't wear sunglasses, always protect your eyes from any wood chips that go flying. Also, you're going to want something to drink because you're going to dehydrate, especially on a hot day like today. I also have these nice gloves. Also, I want to point this out. This is the area where I'm working, and we are known to have snakes here. So if you are working in a woodland area or an area thick with brush, you want to watch out for snakes where you're working. This is why this is going to be challenging. I don't want to harm this other tree here. I'm trying to get to the base of the tree I want to cut down. You can see it's pretty tall. It goes way up there. And somehow I have to get my chainsaw down into that base where I'm not affecting this tree here. It's intertwined with the base of this tree here too. So I'm going to have to be extra careful where I make my cut. I might even have to go up further. In fact, when I was out here before, I did start making a cut, so I might have to find that cut. And then after you get the height of the tree cut, you can always go back and cut the stump down, because I don't want to injure this little shrub growing. I located the cut about 3 feet up the tree, so that's where I'm going to begin. So I have my gloves on, gloved up, I have the chainsaw in hand. I see where I made my prior cut. It's challenging getting through here because it's thick. This is about the area where I started my cut from this side of the tree. It's very difficult to get in here without holding this tree back, and it's nearly impossible because the branches don't want to bend. I'm just thinking the best strategy here. I want the tree to fall my way. I don't want it to fall towards my house the other way. I'm just trying to get a good idea because of course safety always comes first. So when you're doing this type of work, you know, this is a tree we're talking about. So I'm working with about a 40-foot tree here. It doesn't really look that high, but I believe it is. It's way taller than my house. So considering that, yeah, this tree could really do some damage if it falls on me, if it kicks back and snaps on me. It could really do some damage. So I'm looking to cut it where I think it will fall in the safest location. You can't control 100% of where a tree is going to fall, but you can increase the odds by strategizing your cuts. And looking around here, I have my lilac trees, I have my trumpet vine, I have some wild raspberries. To my left is a cedar tree. So I don't want to have this fall on the tree and then roll in my direction. So you always have to keep that in mind. You're keeping in mind, 1, where to start the cuts, 2, where you can semi-control where the tree is going to land, 3, you have to make sure you're out of the way, and as you'll see as we progress here, you also have to watch and listen for things like pop. When the tree is breaking free of its own trunk, you're going to hear a pop. Then you know to be extra careful at that time, because the tree is going to come down shortly after that. And that's when the danger really begins, because you don't want the tree to pop up and hit you in the face. You don't want the tree to roll off towards your direction and crush you to death. It's just a very dangerous situation. Now, of course, this is a small tree comparatively, but it's tall. So that's the hard part here, the height of it. Also, you want to keep in mind, the further you cut into the tree's going to have a mind of its own, and it may bend back and lay on your chainsaw. If that happens, your chainsaw could get stuck in the cut. And then you're going to have to do a little tweaking and push on the tree and things like that to get the chainsaw free. You also want to bear in mind that the chainsaw is very dangerous in itself because it has kickback. Even though I'm using a electric Black & Decker chainsaw, it's not a gas powered, still has kickback, and it's very powerful. This one happens to be light enough for me, and I find it's easier to use for me. Of course, it's not most practical for this tree. This really should have a gas powered chainsaw to cut it down, but I'm going to give it my best. So let's get started. Now, I've already made a cut here. I might make a cut here to make that triangular notch. Let's see what happens. Now what I'm doing is I'm pressing my full body weight into this tree, and I'm trying not to hit this branch here of this other shrub, because I don't want to ruin this. I want this to survive. That was pretty easy, actually. I've now made a notch completely through the right and left side. I've gotten through and I made a triangular notch. So now I have to strategize. Okay, I've done that. That's good. I don't want the tree falling on me, so I got to get out of the way. But where do I go next? Okay, now that I made it to this side, I'm going to try to go ahead and cut right here. You can see this notch here. I got through it with ease. It wasn't that difficult, but now it ties in to this cut that I had started weeks before. The challenging part is getting a good angle to cut this with the chainsaw. You can see how I tied this cut in to this cut here. after assessing, after I've been cutting for a little bit, over here I have a clearing next to my lilacs. These skinny trees are the birch trees, but the lilac trees are right there. And I don't want this tree running into my lilac trees and devastating them. It took a long time for them to grow. I'm trying to get this tree to fall right through the center here, but I may have to manipulate the tree to fall down there. I'm taking a break because I needed to change the battery in the chainsaw. That's one thing. Always have a few batteries charging. I have several of the Black & Decker electronic products. I have the bush trimmer, I have a weed whacker, and I have the chainsaw and maybe something else. So I have a few batteries and I always have them charging. This way you're not in the middle of cutting down a tree and running out of a battery. Sometimes you have to utilize other tools such as a hacksaw. Saw just got stuck in the tree, in the cut of the tree. It's about halfway through, and now I'm going to start cutting on the opposite side, and I'm trying my best to get it to fall there. You can see there's like a pie wedge in the tree right now, and I'm going to attempt to cut the rest of it, hoping the tree is just going to drop and not kick back on anyone. So in this instance, the tree fell over and then I heard a pop. Usually I hear the pop first. It did not fall where I wanted it to go. And as you can see though, it is hung up in the cedar tree. Now the dangerous part is this is where the tree can suddenly roll. The tree can suddenly pop off and pop up. I don't want to get hit in the face, so this is extremely crucial that you take extra caution when the tree is at this intersection of its final stages of being cut down. Timber! And there's the kick up. I'm glad this video took this turn. It was unexpected, but it's a good teaching moment. This is a very dangerous thing to do, especially by yourself. I do have help today. If I didn't, I would have never attempted to do this because the tree is really large. I have cut down trees on my own, smaller in size and diameter, but I knew this was going to be a beast. The tree is down, not where I wanted it to go. So I have my work cut out for me, because now I will be trying to trim it up and cut small chunks off as I go. We'll see what happens. So now I have a big tree hanging over my wall there. Yeah. Well, this part is actually pretty easy because you can either do it with a hacksaw or a chainsaw because the branches are little until it gets to the thicker part of the trunk. So you can get right in here and see. It's just going to take a lot of work to get this down. We actually rolled and landed here, so we're able to cut off chunks of it. And we were able to get some branches off from the lower hanging part that hung over the front yard here. The tree is buckling where the cut is made. And again, this is very dangerous. You want to make sure that nobody's in the way. And you heard how hard that fell. The rest of the tree is kind of suspended up in there. I have a ladder and I can keep trimming away at all the branches. There's one huge log down. And like I said, this isn't even a big tree. Why you may want to hire a professional instead of attempting to do this on your own, especially if you've never done this type of work before. I've cut lots of trees down. I've never had it go quite like this. This is the first time this has happened to me. Usually they fall where I want them to fall. But as you can see, and I demonstrated, that's not always the case. And they're trying to pull the tree through to the front. So I'm going to just sit here and tape it for a while because this is funny. The most important thing is to obviously practice safety. You don't want the tree with a mind of its own to go tumbling down on somebody. A tree is very heavy. If my grandfather were alive, he would have hooked up some chains to this thing and he would have dragged it out of here with his truck. I don't have a truck and I don't have any chains, so I'm doing it the hard way. It looks like I'm ready to pull it from the front. Let's see what happens. So with it pulled down a little bit more, we can start to cut down the rest of the branches. It's going on about 3:30. I've been at this all afternoon since around noon. You can also see I took my bush trimmer and I trimmed up the front of the retaining wall, which was all prickers and overhang of vines. I have these really pretty red berries growing, but there's a bunch on top of the retaining wall, so I didn't mind taking the rest down. There's this beautiful wild grapevine leaf. If you've seen any of my prior videos, you'll see that I have them growing all over, and this year I actually got full-size edible grapes. So I just left this for fall. I think it's pretty. It gives it a little decorative look hanging over the wall, but the rest of the wall has been cleaned off finally. I started this project earlier in the summer and it got too hot, so I never got back out here to finish until today. You can see it's not just tree limbs and leaves, it's also tall grasses that I cut down, prickers mixed in. And I did want to mention something else. If you pan around here, you'll notice I have a bit of a mess growing over here. I have more of those pretty red berries. I have wild grape. This is where the full-size grapes were growing. I don't know if they're still here. Let's take a look. I'm hoping the critters ate them, because that's what I left them. Oh yeah, you can see right down in there. Get my hand down in there. You can see the grapes are still there. Look at that. So I left them for the critters, but I had them growing everywhere. You can still see smaller ones hanging on the vines everywhere. But see how the tall grasses get this stuff at the end? In a prior video, I showed how to use a bush trimmer to trim the tall grasses. And I just wanted to make a note that aside from being kind of decorative and pretty in the fall, as you can see, and these aren't there all summer, these just come out at the end of the season. I leave one in my front yard and I leave one in my backyard without trimming it down, because a farmer once told me that during the winter when it snows, it gives birds refuge from the snow, having the taller stalks available to them. So that's why I don't cut them all down. I do leave a couple in my yard, and it's usually like this one here is such a mess anyway. It would be a hassle for me to get in there and cut every single stalk down. So I'm gonna leave that one. And in the backyard, I have a huge one that's grown, and I'm just gonna leave it. Please let me know if you would have done anything differently to get that tree down in the comments below. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.